The reason they do it is someone can falsify an ID, but you can't falsify fingerprints. You see exactly who that person was. If someone's a foreigner and we have their immigration document, we can sort of do a hack in the system and verify their temporary or permanent visa. If they give a voting credential, we can check through the voting credential site that this is a real voting credential. It's not a fake one. The notaries now require people to have 2 sets of ID or verification in the national electoral system where they put their fingerprints. So you know that this person appearing and the ID they presented is really one and the same person.
Welcome to Live by Design Mexico Edition, the podcast about creating freedom, adventure, and a life in Mexico that truly feels like your own. I'm your host, Taniel Chemsian. If you've been dreaming of warmer days, smarter investments, and a future designed on your terms, your journey begins here. Every week, we dive into stories, insights, and strategies to help you make Mexico not just a destination, but a new way of life. We've got so much to cover today, we had to split it into 2 episodes. So settle in and don't miss a moment. Don't wait for life to happen. Design it. And it starts right here. Escrow companies also have peso accounts in Mexico. So once in a while, we do have transactions, Mexican seller, Mexican buyer. And still, they don't want to use escrow because they don't understand the concept of what is escrow.
Yes.
But I find it really risky just wiring the money to the seller, even though you've got the contract in place. But then if you have to sue them, how long is it going to take for that to get resolved? Years, months?
A long time. So let me tell you my methodology for this other system. So what we do is if someone's going to buy a property, people say, oh, I'm going to buy, can you look over the contract? I don't care about the contract. The contract is the least of it because I want to use my contract, which can be a rock solid contract. I want to see the property deed. I want to see the property tax bill. I want to see everything in the property so I can do the notary's job, check all the title for defects, and then once it looks good, we'll prepare an ironclad contract where they get 5 days to pay the deposit or the contract's canceled with no liability to them. And then once we do what's called a freeze on the property, called aviso cautelar, which puts a freeze for the transaction between buyer and seller. So we've checked the title, we've checked everything that could come up. We know the title's clean, we know the owner's the owner. We verify too. We've had people that come to me and say, oh, I'm going to buy this house from this guy. I said, wait, I give him 50,000 peso deposit. I says, oh. And then I look at the title, the 2 people. I said, okay, well, this other person, I either need, the adjudication or a court order for probate. I need the divorce order if it's a divorce. I need a power of attorney, or I need to see they're here to have them sign the agreement. They're going to come and appear. I don't know where she is. And the guy left.
So question, let's say the seller is Mexican. The title is under the husband's name. He's married. So you see the marriage certificate and the wife, right? So could you explain, because a lot of people are not familiar with the different regimes in which people can get married. So
if it depends on a lot of factors. Generally, if a person acquired property is married, even if let's say a guy acquires the property and they're married, even a spouse is not on it, then there could be potential cloud on title or a title issue if the spouse doesn't sign. Now, the only way to get around that, there are 2 ways to get around it. One is if they can prove that they were married under separate property, which then each person's property is separate, no one has a claim to it. Or in the event that, sure, the husband acquired the property, he was married, but he acquired it through inheritance. So the wife would have no claim, or it was acquired through gift or donation.
Well, what if he purchased it before they got married?
If they purchased it before they got married, generally they won't have any issue with it.
Which means the husband can just sign and you don't need the wife.
The husband can sign. The only we'd have to look a little bit further. For example, if the husband acquired prior to marriage, there's a vacant plot of land, and they got married under community property, and there's a house on it. Well, in theory, you have an increase in value to that property, and you obviously had community property funds, mutation of funds being converted from separate, property from separate to the community having interest in it because there was buildings, community property funds invested in that property, and the wife could have a claim.
But what if the husband married let's say, an American and they got married in Los Angeles, would this still apply?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, because it depends. Here in Jalisco, there's the presumption of community property. So they're going to want to see the marriage certificate. And with the presumption here, if it doesn't state the regime or how they were married, then they're going to make the assumption of community property.
So every transaction is different, as we all know, Spencer. What key steps or safeguards should buyers always expect in a purchase sale agreement?
Well, before signing, have someone review the deed, how the person acquired title, to make sure they didn't steal the property, there's no funny business, and also the measurements. I mean, a lot of times the issues that come up that, if no one says anything after closing, oh, there's a problem with your deed, and now the agents no speak English, and they ghost you. So if there's any issues, they need to be dealt with up front before someone commits by signing a contract, before they turn over any money, to make sure everything's on the up and up. That's the good step. Also, use the aviso cautelar to kind of put that freeze on the property, and then make sure that you get a home inspection. You check the property out thoroughly.
So basically, you're saying hire an attorney to do all of this for you.
Because, right? Yes, people say, oh, well, the notary is a specialist. They come in. True, the notary comes in at the tail end. After you've committed yourself, you've signed a contract, you paid over money. So if there are red flags or anything that isn't, 100%, you're at a disadvantage because you have no right. You put in no contingencies, you put in nothing. I had one property, we found an encroachment. Their property encroached on the neighbors. I was looking at the property and said, this outbuilding is kind of weird. Then, oh, that's nothing. I said, no, put a contingency in there. So instead of them saying, they try to say, oh, that's easy to do, just fix it after. No, if it's so easy, fix it prior to close. It wasn't as easy, but we forced the issue, and at closing, it was all fixed.
Question for you. That's happened to me before, where a client of mine has bought a property and encroached on someone else's land, but they can't find the owner. Because this property, they didn't build it. They bought it. It was already built and encroaching on someone else's property. And it's a huge the adjacent lot is this, I don't know how many acres it is. It's in the mountains. But what if you're trying to find that owner to say, hey, I've got, 300 square meters of construction sitting on your land, but, you're trying to do the right thing and maybe, have a settlement and pay them a fee and then incorporate that into their deed, but you can't find that owner. It's a corporation. Who knows who it is? They're nowhere to be found. What then?
Well, everyone can be found. I mean, are the property taxes being paid? If it's a corporation, I can go in the federal system and see who were the founding partners, who are the legal representatives. It's going to tell me their CURP number, their place of birth, their date of birth. There are ways to find people. Maybe a lay person will say, oh, it's a corporation, throw up their hands and say, oh, nothing. As an attorney, I have other ways of finding people. It's not perfect, but about 80 or 90% of the time, we end up finding people in that case. If not, it may be a property somebody will want to bow out on, or tell the seller, look, I'll wait, or we can do a promise to purchase contract and let them go through the legal channels, file in the court to maybe do a lot line adjustment. And if they can't find the person, see if the judge authorizes searches where they will do search the National Banking Commission, the National Voting, INE, National Electoral Institute, as well as the electric company, all these places to see if they have an address for this person, if they're a natural person. And if not, if the court authorizes service by publication, then that will happen. And then after the time to respond expires, then they're deemed notified.
Okay, so let's say you find the owner of the adjacent property and says, nope, I want you to destroy, the 200 square meters that's sitting on my land.
Then, well, I mean, hopefully you saw me first, we found this issue out, then say, well, all right, you go to the seller and you have him reduce the price or you walk away.
But what if you already bought the property, and then you discover this? and then you contact your neighbor and say, hey, I'm sorry, we weren't aware. I want to pay you X number of dollars or pesos for this part that's encroached sitting on your property. And the guy goes, hey man, I don't want your money and I want that construction to be demolished. What do you do?
I mean, we have to look at the circumstances, but if it was, one angle could be if it was done in good faith and it was part of the measurements for the tax office, you could do an adverse possession case and see if that sticks in the court as an option to forcibly take over that part of the land. If not, I'd have to look at, see the exact terms and what happened in the case law to see if there are any other defenses that can be put up, or else you'd have to demolish it.
Wow, that's a nightmare.
But that's why if there are, weird properties or other stuff, it's not a regular house. I mean, with the regular house, the agent, even the appraiser, should do the measurements and make sure everything's in the up and up. If it's a larger or super irregular, you have some properties that are literally like jigsaw puzzles. I mean, with all the angles and measurements, it's not just square or rectangular. And that's where you really, really have to do your measurement. There's an issue in Chapala in Riberas del Pilar. So back 60 years ago, where properties were irregular, they take out a tape measure. Well, now you've got laser measuring devices, you've got GPS, you've got exact, and you have entire fractionamentos where all the measurements are way, way off.
Yeah, I see a lot of that over here, and we have a lot of irregular shaped lots, and we've come across issues all the time, and it takes a while to get all of these resolved. But
generally, if you have a lot line dispute, and the neighbor. And I think the rule is if you're only disputing, 10%, you can do an administrative lot line adjustment through a notary public office if you notify all the neighbors and they're in agreement.
Okay, Spencer, I want to shift into a real estate trust and a regular deed. So in Puerto Vallarta is part of the restricted zone, which is 50 kilometers from the coastline. And the restricted zone is also 100 kilometers from the international borders. So in these regions, as you know, if a foreigner who's acquiring a property has to have a fideicomiso, which is just trust, in which the bank holds the title. In Chapala, a foreigner does not need a trust because it's more than 50 kilometers inland. If a foreigner is buying in Chapala, you don't have a trust. So you just have this simple deed. Can they put beneficiaries in these simple deeds? And does it have to be a Mexican national? How does that work? And how do they protect their assets in the event of their passing? And how they for their beneficiaries? So
you can put anybody as a beneficiary. The only difference is if you put a foreigner as a beneficiary in the restricted zone, then they will have to use the land trust unless they're a Mexican national. So we've had cases where, someone's grandma's Mexican, so I'll make their parent Mexican, and then I'll make them Mexican, and therefore no land trust. But if it's a foreigner who's going to acquire, if they're going to keep the property, they'll need a land trust. If we can do 2 legal acts in the closing, then we'll do the formalization and the recognition of the death of the settler, trustor of the trust, and the recognition of the beneficiary. But in the same act, there's the sale of the property, so then they sell the property. But if the person wants to have it in their name and use it and acquire the property, then they're going to need to coordinate with one of the banks to put the property in a trust, or use the same trust if it's in a trust already.
So let's just say you have, here in Puerto Vallarta, a couple bought the property, right? One passes away. So the surviving spouse is going to acquire the deceased's share, and there's a cost associated with that. But what happens sometimes, if one of the spouses passes away, the survivor says, I don't want to live here without my husband, so they want to sell. So we put it on the market, we find a buyer. And so that's when you're talking about, you could have 2 acts, basically 2 transactions at once at the closing, correct?
Yes.
One is recognizing her as a primary beneficiary, right? Acquiring the deceased. And what is the fee associated with that? Because it's not free. She doesn't just automatically acquire his 50% rights. What are the fees generally for her to?
Well, generally, Mexico, I mean, property taxes are dirt cheap, relatively speaking, right? In the U.S., they're, the standard as a banker was 1.25% of the value, for annual property tax. Here the tax is maybe $100 a year, maybe $200 a year for a little nicer property. So you have transfer taxes, and it depends, generally, like here in Jalisco, it's 5%. We use 5% as kind of rough guesstimate of what the transfer costs are going to be of the tax value. Now, in Nayarit, right across the river there, it's going to be the higher of the commercial value or the tax value. Here in Jalisco, we get the benefit of the lesser. So that's when we try to have the appraisers keep that value low, because you have a transfer tax of about 3.2%. You've got property registry fees, you've got appraisal fees, you've got, certificate fees. So it's about 5%. So within spouses, they're going to pay 5% of 50% of the tax value, and a good guesstimate you can get off the property tax bill, but it's not 100%. I mean, the appraiser is still going to have to do that value and justify the value, although they generally try to come in right around the property tax value.
When you say the commercial value, you're talking about what someone is buying it for, like the sales price.
Yes,
correct?
The sales price.
Okay. And tax value, you're talking about the fiscal value on which your property tax is based on.
The valor catastral, the property tax office assessed value.
Okay. Now, let's just say in a situation, husband passes away. He passed away 3 years ago, and they haven't recognized the wife as, they haven't modified the trust in which now the wife has 100%. Is that okay for them to wait that long? Are there going to be fees if they don't recognize her right away?
If it's in a trust, I don't know how they're handling trusts. Let's talk about my area, not your area, where there's no trusts. So the past 10 or 15 years, if someone dies and the surviving spouse, oh, wow, that 5% is a lot of money. That's 100,000 pesos, 150,000. Let me see if I can start saving my Social Security checks to pay that transfer tax. Because obviously they want to stay in Mexico because it's cheap, it's good living, the weather's nice, but they're living on their Social Security here. Prior, all right, 6 months, a year, no problem. More recently, buried in the municipal treasury laws were, all right, if there's a beneficiary clause in the deed, you have, 2 months or 3 months to sign a new deed putting that property in your name. Otherwise, we're going to charge penalties and penalty interest on the transfer tax that wasn't paid for you acquiring the property. And this is a recent development. Maybe the past 6 months, they've been more and more municipalities, maybe even a year, more municipalities are now charging that penalty, whereas before they would just overlook it.
Money.
Yeah, well, they're always looking to find money, and this is a way to not raise taxes and say, hey, it's the law. And people are like, well, my friend didn't have to pay that. Well, yeah, I mean, this is a new practice they're doing. Yeah. So people need to be aware. And it's generally hard if there's a husband and the wife, and the husband was the breadwinner and the wife only has a small amount of Social Security, then, although the penalty cannot exceed the amount of the tax. So let's say the transfer tax is 50,000 pesos. You can put off for 5 years and the maximum penalty is another 50,000 pesos. So, I mean, it's not like, hey, do this, you're forced out of your house. It's just, ignore it and put it off because you can't pay it. You still need to live in your house.
So, Spencer, if an American or Canadian, most of our clients are American and Canadian coming down here, they want to buy a property, retire here in Mexico, what would you say are non-negotiables they need to understand legally before they make this big move? Well, I mean, from a practical matter, rent in a neighborhood before you buy. What are the smells? How is it when the rainy season comes? Floods. How is it at nighttime? Is there an all-night taco place next door? Does the neighbor on the other side have 5 dogs on the roof that bark incessantly day and night? Does the neighbor in back have 5 roosters that don't stop crowing all the time? So once you know the neighborhood, and maybe you're like, oh crap, I moved here and I have bad ankles and I have cobblestone roads and I just, the practical part of it.
Then the other part of it is finding a good agent, who will put in contingencies, who will work to, making sure you're not overpaying for a property. And before you purchase the property, where you can review all the documents for the property, the deed, everything else. We even tell people, hey, ask for the utility bills. Because if there's an electrical issue, you're going to see like, wow, the electrical bill is like 4,000 pesos every billing cycle when it should be 800. Little indicators there might be an issue, as well as the flooding and anything else going on. And then whenever, not just real estate, but even renting, whenever you sign any contract, good practices mean, one, you want to walk away with an original signed contract. If you go to sign a contract, here's one, we'll give you a copy later. Nope. And then when you have your original contract, sign every single page.
Spencer, talking about signing contracts, when I used to rent an apartment here years ago when I first moved in, I rented this one apartment for about 6 years. And I signed every year. It was a 1-year lease. So every single year I had to sign another contract. But then all of a sudden, the last 2 years, the landlord wanted the lease signed at a notary's office. Obviously, something went wrong with one of her tenants. So now she wanted the contracts signed at a notary's office, in which I had to pay for it. Even though she's the one that wants it, she was charging me, right? I did it. It wasn't that much. Do you recommend like just regular purchase sale agreements being notarized? And does that make a difference?
So with the rental agreement, it's like these alternative justice agreements. I mean, that's another area, but those are technically fraud. What they want to do is with the notary, it was a convenio de transacción. These alternative justice agreements for rental contracts basically makes your rental contract a stipulated judgment. So instead of you defaulting on your lease, not making payments, hey, buddy, make the payments. 3 months pass, file in the court. They serve you 2 or 3 months later, goes through all the stages. It takes a year to get you out. If you play tricks, it takes 2 years. It's a stipulated judgment where they file what's called a via de premio in the civil court. The court accepts it and gives you 5 days. Hey, you breached, you didn't pay. Did you pay? If you didn't, then you got to get out. So it's a streamlined eviction process that only benefits the landlord, because these agreements, the convenio de transacción and the alternative justice agreements, if you read it, it is because people went to a notary or went to a mediation session because they had an existing relationship and a dispute arose. These contracts are being abused because they're being done right off the bat with someone you have no prior relationship with. And I've talked to notaries and other attorneys that say, yes, technically they're fraud. So you have some angles to fight them. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you comply with your contract, you'll have no issue. Now, many notaries don't like to notarize purchase contracts because that could generate a tax or extra fees that people would have to pay for no reason. I mean, a well properly prepared purchase contract signed by 2 witnesses is all you need, where every party has an original.
Now when I first started real estate, I went to the closing, buyer, seller signed a deed. And I think it was around 10 years ago, I think more or less, where they now require both parties to fingerprint the deeds, right? Do you recommend fingerprinting a regular purchase sale agreement? Does that make a difference?
I mean, you can. It just depends. I mean, the reason they do it is some can falsify an ID, but you can't falsify fingerprints. You see exactly who that person was. If someone's a foreigner and we have their immigration document, we can sort of do a hack in the system and verify their temporary or permanent visa. If they give a voting credential, we can check through the voting credential site that this is a real voting credential. It's not a fake one. The notaries now require people to have 2 sets of ID or verification in the national electoral system where they put their fingerprints. So you know that this person appearing in the ID they presented is really one and the same person.
And some notaries now are actually video recording the signing of the deed by both parties. That's something new that's going on as well. So Spencer, for someone in the United States sitting on the border and thinking about moving to Mexico, but they're feeling overwhelmed or uncertain about the future with what's going on, what would you say to them about designing a life in Mexico? I mean, should they come? Should they not? What should they think about? And who should they listen to? And who should they just kind of block out?
Well, I mean, come and experience it for yourself. I mean, you have two extremes. You have the Mexico deniers. Mexico's Disneyland, nothing bad happens here. No, Mexico is a third world country. There is violence. There are people that risk their lives to leave here. That's a true reality. But then you have people, I live here, I live well, I've been here 20 years, I'm a sort of public figure, and I've never had any issues. I know lots of people that have had zero issues whatsoever. I mean, sure, you can get, murdered eating tacos. Wrong place, wrong time. But that could happen at Taco Bell in the U.S. I mean,
Death by taco?
That's, bad things can happen.
Sure.
Stay away from drugs. Don't commit crimes. Stay away from, narcos. Stay away from shady people and stuff like that. And do your due diligence. Mexico, the weather's great. The people are friendly. They're very accommodating. And blend in. Try to speak the language. Take Spanish classes. Smile. Mexican society is very polite. I mean, I can be a polite foreigner and I think, God, I was probably a jerk because I wasn't polite enough. Or, I mean, you walk in the room, you got to shake everyone's hand, and leaving, got to shake everyone's hand again. I mean, being polite for a foreigner can still be slightly rude Mexican culture. So just being nice, being polite, don't mess with bad stuff. They say don't leave your brain at the border. Hire professionals you're comfortable with. Come here. Don't come here right off the bat. I'm going to buy a house right there. I mean, you could, but it's rolling the dice. I mean, learn neighborhoods, learn customs, learn the culture, learn where you want to be. Do you want to be right on the beach? Do you want to be in the mountains? Do you want to be in a gated subdivision? Do you want to be in the heart of an area where everything's walking distance? Do you want to be in a place where there are more cultural events? I mean, do you want to be in a colonial city? Mexico has all these extremes, white sand beaches. I mean, jungles, everything, deserts. So it's really, what's your lifestyle? What's your budget? And then find it and live it.
Yeah. Great advice. Thank you so much, Spencer. This has been wonderful. Especially talking about all the legal stuff, about all the pitfalls and how to safeguard and protect your investment. So Spencer, if somebody wants to get a hold of you or your law firm, what is the best way for them to reach out?
So we have a website, chapalalaw.com, CHAPALALAW.com, or just even Google me on the internet, and you can see the kind of stuff that our firm does. We focus, generally here in the Guadalajara, Chapala area, but we have clients on the coast, and some people are psychic. Whenever I have a trip to Vallarta planned the week before, I usually get 10 people calling me. I say, well, what a coincidence. I'll be there in a few days. So, for certain things we can help people. Certain federal issues that are not, state with federal agencies, we can help people all over the country. But I like to stick to stuff locally here for most things because, I don't want to drive 3 hours to Vallarta to wait in a government line. It's better to have local help for that. But we can help you strategize, prepare paperwork, give opinions on things and help guide people.
Wonderful. Spencer, thank you so much. And we're going to put your contact information in the show notes. Hey, I'm probably going to reach out to you down the road and do another interview and catch up. This is a lot of great information. Thank you so much, Spencer. You have a wonderful day.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Live by Design Mexico Edition. If there's a topic you'd love for us to cover, email us at info@tanielchemsian.com. We'd love to hear your ideas. And be sure to subscribe, share the show with a friend, and join me each week as we explore how to create freedom, adventure, and live by design under the Mexican sun. Design your days now, and your future will follow.